Town Bank Mortgage, NMLS number 512138, is an equal housing lender. This podcast is for informational purposes only. And now, the man born with the 5 o'clock shadow and with the NMLS number 2028201. He is a gentleman. He is a scholar. He is
Tyler Cralle.
Well, once again, another day and another, really not a lot happening in the U.S. Some stuff, but nothing that's going to move rates. That starts tomorrow or today. It's hard when you record the morning show the night before. So Wednesday, we're going to see some data, and then Thursday is the big day. But we do have a lot to get into. International news, of course. Some updates, both Iran and Russia. We got to talk about that too. So a lot to get to here on this Wednesday edition of Wilmington Mortgage. I am the aforementioned host of this podcast. Tyler Cralle, of course, loan officer at Town Bank Mortgage right here in Wilmington, North Carolina, where we break down the top stories impacting mortgage rates every single weekday, unless, of course, I'm sick, on vacation, or it is Azalea Festival week, and it is neither of those. So, all right, trying to think where I want to start. So let's talk about the one domestic story that could have an impact on rates. Okay, first of all, actually, let's start here. What happened with rates? So rates were down, I think, a basis point. So we're under 4.5%. So, I mean, barely. I mean, right now I'm looking at 4.499%. So we are literally, and that's a little bit of futures market in there too. So I think we're down about a basis point from yesterday. And then Mortgage News Daily had the 30-year fix down a basis point, which is good because the 30-year fixed is no longer 6.66%, which is a horrible number that needs to not exist. So now we're at 6.65%. So not a lot of movement. It was better in the morning. On Tuesday morning, I think at one point we were down 3 or 4 basis points, and then it just kind of slowly clawed its way back. So the one event that happened domestically, that was a 2-year note auction. So the Treasury had a 2-year note auction selling $69 billion worth of 2-year notes. And it was a pretty good auction. I mean, considering that we've seen kind of a rough week for bonds, has not been the best ever since the Fed meeting. So you were expecting a weaker auction. It wasn't a strong auction, but it wasn't the worst thing either. So the Treasury sold $69 billion of 2-year notes at a high yield of 4.189%. That was up from 4.071% at the last auction. Highest yield since January. However, the auction had a positive tail, a stop through. The when issued yield was 4.192%. So a 0.3 basis point better. Stop through, of course, occurs when an investor accepts a lower yield than the market expected before the auction, which is a sign, if they're willing to take lesser yield, that's sign of strength. And that was the first stop through since January. So like I said, not amazing, but good. The bid to cover ratio was exactly where it was last month, 2.46%, or 2.46. The bid to cover ratio measures the amount of bids received relative to the amount of debt offered. So higher number is better. And then foreign demand was actually softer. So indirect bids, which are primarily foreign central banks and overseas investors, was 55.45%. That was down from 57.6% and was the lowest share since December of last year, which, okay, now things are getting weak. But domestic investors stepped in. Direct bidders, which include pension funds, mutual funds, and other institutional investors, took 34.3% of the auction. That was the highest share since October. So that was good. And as a result, primary dealers who kind of, have to buy, their share was down to 10.24%, down from 12.3% in the lowest level since February. So bid to cover was exactly the same, right around the average. Like I said, wasn't a negative tail. And then while the foreign demand did drop off, we did see some solid domestic demand. So, like I said, not a super strong auction, but not bad. So that was it. That was the only report that was somewhat related to what could move mortgage rates. It was a bad day for markets, though. I mean, that was also, I thought maybe we'd get a little boost, like kind of a flight to safety. NASDAQ closed down better. In the morning, it was down 2.5%. End of the day, down 2.2%. S&P was down 1.4%. And the Dow Jones was like almost unchanged. So it was a bad day for equity. So I thought we might get a little bit of a boost. We did not. I guess it was better than a bad day for bonds, but not a lot of change in bonds. So what is also happening in the world? Well, one of the reasons why I think we're also seeing kind of no change with regards to the bond market is Iran. So, negotiations have started in Switzerland, trying to figure the next deal over these next 60 days. And there is a lot of confusion. We joked about this yesterday with, I don't know if the Strait of Hormuz is open or closed. It's kind of hard to figure it out. But now we're hearing conflicting stories about what exactly they are agreeing to in Switzerland. So on Monday, J.D. Vance, vice president, said that Iran had agreed to let inspectors back into the nuclear sites. This would be the first time since the invasion, since earlier this year, that they would be allowed back in. Iranian officials, though, said they didn't make any such commitment. In fact, they said the matter was barely discussed. Esmail Bagay, spokesman for Iran's foreign ministry, said there was no plan to invite inspectors to nuclear sites that were hit by U.S. and Israel strikes in June of 25. They know they're wrong, President Trump said later in the day at an event in Pennsylvania. Earlier, he had posted on social media that Iran had fully and completely agreed to the highest level nuclear inspections. I think he said to infinity as well, which I thought was kind of funny. It reminded me like when you're a kid and you're like, yes, yes, yes. No, yes times 1,000. Yes, yes times infinity. That's kind of where we are. So no real change there. The chief of the UN's nuclear watchdog, Rafael Grossi, said in an interview with Japanese broadcasters NHK World, published on Tuesday, that inspections would commence, quote, the sooner the better, but did not say whether Iran had made a specific commitment on how much access inspectors would have. So we don't really have a answer. So it's not usually good for negotiations when one side's like, well, we agree to this, and the other side's like, no, we didn't. So that's causing, I think, some of the stall in the bond market. Now, speaking of the Strait of Hormuz, I mentioned that the International Maritime Organization and the government of Oman said on Tuesday they had a plan to help hundreds of ships stuck in the Persian Gulf pass through the Strait of Hormuz. On Monday, 39 vessels went through the strait, capping the busiest 3-day period since the war began. So the good news, Strait of Hormuz, somewhat open. Ships are moving through it. That's the good news. Definitely good for oil markets. It's just not translating into other markets like bond. It's not. And then also a big story on Tuesday, the United States Senate gave final approval to a resolution instructing President Trump to end the war in Iran or seek congressional authorization to continue it. A 50-48 vote, with 4 Republicans joining Democrats in favor. I mean, clearly he is trying to end it with the agreement. So he's already kind of moving down that path. I don't know if they want him to stop the negotiations or kind of what the vote was, but clearly he's trying to end it. Almost obviously so. So not a lot of movement out of Iran. And then just to add a little more fun, a little more fuel to the fire. Remember when Russia invaded Ukraine and hasn't left like 5 years ago? No, when was that? That was 4 years ago, 2022. And everyone thought, what's that idiot's name? He goes on Tucker Carlson's show. Douglas MacArthur, I think that's his name. I remember like a month after the invasion, he's like, Ukraine's going to fall next week is what I'm hearing. And then he proceeded to tweet that for like 4 years. I bet he's still tweeting it. I haven't looked at his Twitter, but I bet he's still arguing that they're on the cusp of losing. They're not. And so to me, this is a sign of desperation. So Russia, their closest ally, Belarus, has emerged as a potential new front in the Kremlin's confrontation with the West as they are seeking to sort of strengthen their position in the country. Earlier this year, Moscow started a pressure campaign, this according to the Wall Street Journal, on Belarus in the hopes of using it as a springboard to expand Russia's war in Ukraine or to launch a non-conventional operations against the member of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, said former and current Russian and European officials. Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko said French President Emmanuel Macron, in a roughly 90-minute phone call last month, told him that Paris had information that Belarus was going to boost its engagement into the war. He said that Macron warned him against it. An aide to Macron confirmed the call, saying that the French president emphasized the risks Belarus faces if it allows itself to be drawn into the Russian war of aggression against Ukraine. Earlier in the war, 2022, Russia did use Belarus for a little while, but since then has largely stayed out of it. The U.S. officials have made repeated trips to Belarus over the past year in an attempt to draw the country away from Russia. But, I mean, I guess Putin's got to be getting desperate, right? I mean, if you're taking on Ukraine, and I get it, right? Ukraine is getting the support of NATO, is getting the support of the U.S., Europe, the West they're getting support. So I get it. It's not like they're just losing to Ukraine, but they are losing to Ukraine with like help from NATO. But NATO's not in it. So it's like crazy to me that there's someone that's telling Putin, like, you know what we got to do? We got to get NATO involved, like directly involved. We got to use Belarus to really get NATO involved. It's like, what? Why would that? I mean, that to me is like pure desperation. So I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Also, you know what was crazy I think it was last week when oil prices were falling because of the announcement of the peace deal. And then Ukraine attacked Russia, these drones, and like blew up all these like oil refinery plants. And it was crazy because oil prices were falling. And I get it, right? They're falling because of the peace deal with Iran. But a lot of people noted that in any other decade, like this is just a sign of how less reliant we are on Russia for oil, is that any other decade, if there had been explosions like that, interrupting oil markets in Russia, oil prices would have skyrocketed. And they were falling. So, I mean, clearly they should have fallen because of the Iran deal, but you think they would have like maybe not fallen as much. And it's like no one cared. And so, I mean, yeah, Russia is in a very interesting position. I think that's a sign of desperation. But it could also be scary because, I mean, Russia does have nuclear weapons. You don't want a country feeling like they're on their last leg or in a really desperate situation. So this could be good. Like, oh no, maybe Putin will wise up and say, okay, let's just put this to bed. Or it could be really scary kind of a situation. Just a reminder, sometimes we forget that Russia's and Ukraine are at war. All right, while I've been talking here at, what time is it? It's like 7:30, right? Yeah, 7:30, 7:31. News just broke that the House passed an affordable housing bill and is now sent to Trump's desk. I don't know if I want to get into that right now. There's not a ton going on tomorrow, so I might be able to work it in tomorrow's show. We'll talk about what's in the bill. I mean, a lot of it's really good. I mean, a lot of it's about like helping with regulations and encouraging building. But then there's like this really dumb provision everyone's talking about where it's banning institutional investors from being able to buy homes. They define institutional investors as 350 plus. So if you have less, you can still buy homes. but 350 is the limit. And I mean, I get it. Internet's turned corporations into the boogeyman. Oh no, that's the reason why home prices. It's not. They own. But we'll get into it tomorrow. We'll talk about it tomorrow. But some areas, yes, but definitely no impact on the national level. Some local markets, yeah, there's some elevated levels, but they're also selling because real estate has become a less attractive investment for large scale companies because prices have stagnated at a high price point and borrowing costs are high. So it's harder to make that money back. Rents are not climbing like they were. So there's just less places to make money. And so a lot of them are actually net sellers right now, interestingly enough. All right, but we got to go. But that's big. I'm assuming Trump's going to sign it right away. So by the time we do Wednesday's show, he probably will have signed it, or Thursday's show. So we'll talk about it next show. All right. You guys enjoy your Wednesday. We'll be back here Thursday for another edition of Wilmington Mortgage. And remember, as always, do not wait to buy real estate. You buy real estate and wait.